So welcome to this latest video 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over the November 2022 Higher Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now as always there'll be a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic in case you find the question a little bit more challenging or it requires a little bit of practice. So let's get started on this November 2022 Higher Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. So looking at question 1, it says work out 4 to the power of 6 minus 11 over the square root of 625 only, subtracted from 225. So for this, all we need to do is just make sure that we're inputting this into our calculator exactly how it is. So if I just quickly load up my calculator, I first press my fraction button, then 4 to the power of 6, scroll across, subtract 11, then scroll down to the denominator, and then we'll want the root of 625. Then make sure that you are scrolling across because we only want 625 under the square root, and then we're subtracting 225, press equals, press the SD button, and you can see it's going to be our second option. Moving on to question 2, it says work out 3.1 times 10 to the power 9 squared, and the correct answer by typing that all into your calculator correctly should be the third option of 9.61 times 10 to the power 18. Then for question 3, it says the equation of the line y equals 3x minus 6, circle the coordinates for the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept using y equals mx plus c is minus 6, so we're looking for 0 minus 6, which is our first option. Moving on to question 4, it says a times b to the power 4 equals c, circle the expression for a. So in other words, what you want to do is make a the subject. And how do we do that? Well, we get rid of the b to the power 4 by dividing, so a equals c over b to the power of 4, which is our fourth option. Then moving on to question 5, it says written as a product of their prime factors, and we've got 12,600 and 14,112, and it says work out the highest common factor between those two numbers. Now there's loads of ways in which you could work this question out, but I'm going to go for the Venn diagram way only because it has more links to other questions you could get based around this topic. So we've got 12,600 and we've got 14,112. Now the numbers that go in the middle are our highest common factors. So what we want is the numbers that appear in both of their product of their primes. So looking at this, we take the lowest power of the numbers. So here we've got lowest power of 2, which both of them have got, is 3. So I've got 1, 2, 3. They've both got 3 squared, so they both can have 2 3s. And they've both got 1, 7. So my highest common factor is going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 7. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 504. Moving on to question 6, it says the composite bar chart shows information about the percentage of drinks sold by a cafe in 27 and 2019, and it says for part A, in 2007 the cafe sold a total of 24,000 drinks. How many more teas than coffees were sold? So for this, what you want to do is first of all note what each of the percentages are. So that's 42%, this bar is 48%, and this top bar is 10%. Then for 2019, that black bar is 14%, the white section is 36%, and the grey section is 50%. So for part A, we want to see how many, compare the coffees and tea sold. So in 2007, the number of coffees sold is going to be, which is the grey, so it's going to be 42% of 24,000, so it's going to be 0.42 times 24000, and it comes up to an answer of 10,080. Then I look at the tea, and that's going to be 48% of 24,000, so that's going to be 0.48 times 24,000. and that comes up to a value of 11,520. Then what I then want to do is work out the difference. So it's going to be 11520 minus 180, and that gives me an answer of 1440. Then moving on to question 6b, it says, were more coffee sold at a cafe in 2019 than in 2007? So for this, what you need to write, the tick is cannot tell, and the reason for that is because it only gives us, so we only know the percentages, or you could say something along the lines of don't know the total sales in 2019. The only reason why we could work out the 2004 values were because we knew what the total sales were. Moving on to question 7, it says k is a whole number between 40 and 50. The cube root of k is 3 to the nearest whole number. Work out the largest possible value of k. So for k, what we're going to do is just write down when we know it's between 40 and 50. So we try the cube root of 41, the cube root of 42, the cube root of 43, cube root of 44, and so on. Now, if I type in each of these numbers into my calculator, I'm looking for which one rounds up to the nearest of being or rounds to 3. So if I type in the cube root of 41 on my calculator, I get 3.448, and that does round to 3. If I try the cube root of 42, that becomes 3.476. Then if I then do the cube root of 43, it then becomes 3.5033. So the highest value of k is going to be 42. Then moving on to 7b, it says Faye tries to solve x squared equals 100. She says the only possible value of x is 100. Give a reason why she is not correct. And the reason for that is because it can be 10, so minus 10 times minus 10, or minus 10 squared also equals 100. So that would be enough to get the 1 mark there. So moving on to question 8a, it says here is a cuboid. W, x and y are different whole numbers. The total length of all the edges of the cuboid is 80 centimeters and the volume is greater than 200. Work out one possible set of the values for w, x and y. So let's have a look at looking at this key bit of information that we know. So this first line here. So it says all the edges of the cuboid is 80. Well, for each of these, so for w, how many w's have I got? Well, I'm going to end up with 4. So I've got 4w. Then how many x's have I got? Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's plus 4x. And then how many y's have I got? Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So plus 4y, and that equals 80. Then if I divide everything by 4, I get w plus x plus y equals 20. Now I know that from this statement here, that I know that w times x times y has got to be greater than 200. So what you're looking for are 3 numbers that add together, all different, that add together to equal 20, but multiplying all of those 3 numbers has to be bigger than 200. Now, possible answers for this, but it's really important that you do write down what's written in those 2 boxes. So the possible answers you could have, and there's quite a few, you can have 11, 5 and 4. You can have 10, 7 and 3. You can have 10, 6 and 4. You can have 9, 8 and 3. You can have, let me just put a line through there. You can have 9, 7 and 4. You can have 9, 6 and 5 and 8, 7, 5. And again, you can write those numbers in any order, but again, remember that all 3 numbers need to add up to 20. They all need to be different, and when you multiply each of those 3 numbers together, it has to be an answer that's bigger than 200. Moving on to question 8b, it says here is a solid cube and it says circle the expression for the total surface area in square centimetres. So first of all, what we need to do is work out the area of one of the squares, and that's going to be 3a times 3a, which is 9a squared. And then we've got 6 faces, so we've got to do 9a squared times 6, which equals 54a squared, which is our fourth option. For question 9, it says the 47th triangle number is 1128 and the 48th triangle number is 1176. Work out the 49th triangle number. Well, to work out the next triangle number, what we've got to do is just simply add the previous triangle number to the triangle number, the triangle actual position. So here it's going to be 1176 plus 49, and if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 1225. Moving on to question 10, it says that the nth terms of two linear sequences A and B are added together to give the nth term of a new sequence. The new sequence starts 8, 13, 18, 23. The nth term of the sequence A is n plus 1. Work out the nth term of the B sequence. Well, the nth term for this set of numbers, well, we can see that they're going up in fives. So the nth term for this is going to be 5n, and then what do we need to do to get from 5 to 8 is add 3. Now, if one of the terms is n plus 1, I need to add that to sequence B, which I'm just going to write as being something n plus something, and that equals 5n plus 3. Now here what we now need to do is compare the coefficients. So the coefficient of n, well, on the left hand side I'm going to have 1 plus a because I've got 1n, and how many n's have I got on the right hand side? Well, I've got 5. So that means that a must equal 4. Then if I look at the constant, so the coefficient of the constant, then I've got plus 1 plus b on the left hand side, and I've got plus 3 on the second side. So here what I then get is a must equal 2. So then from this, what I can then do is if I substitute these two numbers here into this equation here, we then get sequence B equals an, well, a is 4, so it's going to be 4n, and b is 2, so it's going to be 4n plus 2. Then for 11a, it says that a tank contains 40 litres of water. Water leaks from the tank at a rate of 1.2 litres per minute. The leak is stopped after 20 minutes. Show that when the leak is stopped, the tank contains 16 litres of water. So for this, all we need to do is just do 1.2 multiplied by the time, which is 20. If I type that into my calculator, I get 24, and then I subtract that from the total, so it's 40, take away 24, which equals 16, which is what they wanted me to show. Then for 11b, it says the tank is refilled with water from a tap. The graph shows the amount of water in the tank after the leak was stopped. Complete this report by writing a number in each answer space. So for this, the first thing we need to do is after how many minutes was the leak stopped? Well, each little box of 2 represents 1 minute. So that's going to go up to 3. So it's going to be 3 minutes. And then what I then need to do to work out the next space, to work out the rate, is then work out the gradient of that line. So you pick 2 nice coordinates. So I'm going to go for these 2. And then what I then want to do is work out the gradient using the units on the scales. So going across, that's going to be 7.5. And going up, well, it's going from 25 to 40, and that's 15. So then the rate is 15 litres over 7.5 minutes. And if I type in 15 divided by 7.5, I get an answer of 2. So I just need to write 2 litres per minute. Moving on to question 12, it says the length of a rectangle is 6 times the width. Two of these rectangles are joined with no overlap to make an L shape. The perimeter of the L shape is 98.8 centimeters. Work out the value of the perimeter of one of the rectangles. So let's first of all label this L shape using the information that we know from one rectangle. So that's going to be 6x, 6x. This length here is going to be 5x because it's 6x take away 1x. That's going to be 6x, that's going to be x, and that's going to be x. So then totaling all of that up, we get a total of 26x equals the perimeter, which is 98.8. So then I can then work out what x is. So that's going to be 98.8 divided by 26, which equals 3.8 centimeters. So then to work out the perimeter of the rectangle, it's going to be a total of 14x. So that's going to be 14 times 3.8, and that gives me a total answer of 53.2 centimeters. Now moving on to question 13, it says that a trapezium DEFG is formed by joining triangle DEH and rectangle EFGH. ABC is similar to DEH. Work out the area of DEFG. So first things first, what we need to do is a couple of things. So in order to work out the area of the shape, the big shape, we need to work out what this length here is. Now it's not a square, even though it may look like a square because it's not drawn accurately, and we also, it tells us that it's a rectangle. So what I need to do is work out this length. Now how do I do that? Well, we know that the triangles are similar, so I then need to work out the scale factor. So the length scale factor is going to be 6 divided by 4.2, and that gives me an answer of 10 over 7. So to get from this triangle to this triangle, I've got to multiply by 10 over 7. Now alternatively, what I could do is, there's a couple of ways in which we could do. So we need to work out what this length here is, and we can do that by using Pythagoras. So there is my C, there's my A, there's my B. So what I've then got is a squared equals, now because a is the smaller side, it's going to be 7 squared, take away 4.2 squared. So a squared equals 31.36. Square root that, and I get a equals 28 over 5, or 5.6. So then to work out what EH is going to be, so this length here, so EH is going to be 5.6 multiplied by the scale factor, which is 10 over 7, and I get an answer of 8 centimeters. So this length here is 8 centimeters. So then working out the total area, if I call that A and B, so the total area equals area of A plus the area of B. So the total area of A is going to be, because it's a triangle, it's going to be 6 times 8 divided by 2, and area B is a rectangle, and that's going to be 8 times 7.5. Now if I work out those total lengths, then I get 24 plus 60, which gives me a total of 84 centimeters squared, and there is my final answer. Alternatively, another method you could have done is worked out the area of ABC, worked out what the area scale factor would be, which would be, so the area scale factor is going to be 10 over 7 squared. That will tell me what the area of the triangle was, and then I could then work out the area of B. So, but I'd say still need to work out what this length here is. So I personally would say the method I've showed on screen is probably going to be the most easiest. Moving on to question 14, it says Fred bought an apartment for £137,500. He made 8% profit when he sold the apartment. He used all of his profit to pay 40% of the deposit on the house. The deposit was 1/6 of the price of the house. Work out the price of the house. So quite a lot of information to digest. So first things first, let's work out how much he sold the apartment for. So sold the apartment for, and it's going to be 137500. 8% profit, it's going to be 108%, so that's 1.08, and that comes up to a total of 148,500. Now, in terms of the profit made, well, that's going to be 148,500. Take away the original price, which was 137,500, and that comes up to £11,000. Now, from this, we can see that he then used all the profit to pay 40%. So 40%, use different colour. So 40% of the deposit equals £11,000. So then what we then want to work out is what 100% of the profit was. So 100% of the deposit, so it's going to be 11,000 divided by 40, so we can work out 1%, and then we multiply that by 100 to work out what 100% of the deposit was. So the deposit then was £27,500. Now that was 1/6 of the price. So 1/6 equals 27,500. So if we divide 27,500 divided by 6, then we multiply that by 6, and actually no, that's not the case. So 1/6 is 27,500. So we want to work out what 6/6 are. So let me just get rid of this because I shouldn't have written that again. So therefore 6/6 are going to be 6 times 27,500, and that gives me my final answer of 165,000. Then moving on to question 15, it says circle the correct statement. Now with these questions, what I would always suggest is you do a little sketch of what each of these are and then convert it into the units of what is stated. So if I have a 1 square metre, so that's 1 metre, that's 1 metre. Now 1 metre in millimetres is I multiply it by 100 to get centimetres, then by 10, so it's going to be 10,000 millimetres. And 10,000 millimetres squared is not that, so that's definitely not going to be the case. So looking at this one, if I have a 1 square centimetre and I convert the lengths into millimetres, that's going to be 10 mil. And 10 times 10 is 100, so thankfully the correct answer is the second option. Moving on to question 16, it says here is a sketch of a graph. Circle the possible equation of the graph. So here we're looking for a cubic graph and it's elevated by 1, so the correct answer is going to be the third one, which is y equals x cubed plus 1. Moving on to question 17, it says the sequence of numbers is formed by the iterative process, and we've got this formula. It tells us what u1 is, and the question is asking us to work out what u3 is. So if I get my calculator back up, so I start by entering the first value, which is 1, press equals. Then on the next screen, I set up my fraction and I'm just going to type this in, but wherever I say un, I'm going to swap it with ands. So I've and ands plus 3. So press equals, so that tells me what u2 is, but I want to know what u3 is, so I press it again and it becomes 5 over 2, so the correct answer is the second option. Moving on to question 18, it says that a basketball team plays 19 home games and 19 away games. The box plot shows information about the points and that the team scores in home games. Here are the points scored on 19 away games, and the question is asking us to draw a box plot with this information. So we can see that all the numbers are in order, which is great. So in order to draw my box plot, I need 5 bits of information. So I need the minimum value, the upper quartile, the lower quartile, the median, and the maximum value. So for this, the minimum value I know is 85 and the maximum value is 126. Now to find the median value, I find the middle number, which is going to be 99. Then to find the lower quartile, well, looking at the numbers on the left of the median, I want to pick the number that's in the middle, and the number that's in the middle is 96. And then from the bottom, the numbers on the right of the median to the maximum number, which number's in the middle? Well, it's going to be 109. So then using these values, I can then plot my box plot. So the smallest value is at 85, which is there. Then I've got 96, which is there. 99, which is there. 109, which is there. And 126, which is there. Now again, you need to make sure that you are using a ruler for this, and I know I'm not showing very good practice, but I'm just trying to speed up the process. So I should end up with something that looks like that. Moving on to question 18, it says, on average, did the team score more points in home games or away games? Use one statistical measure to support your argument or decision, it says here. So to work out on average, what you want to do is you want to compare the medians. So for this, you want to compare the median. So looking back at the box plot, who's got the higher median? So it's the home games. So on average, so you could say on average, the team scored more points at home. This is due to a larger median for the home games. So something along the lines that you're comparing the median and you're saying home is going to be absolutely fine. Then for C, it says, was the number of points scored more consistent in home games or away games? Use one statistical measure to support your answer. So again, what you want to do here for consistency is compare the IQR, which is the size of the box. Now the IQR for home was 22. And the IQR for away was 13. So which one's got a smaller IQR? So the correct answer is going to be away due to a smaller IQR. So they're more consistent away from home than they were at home. Moving on to question 19, it says using the quadratic formula otherwise solve, and then we've got this equation here. Now the otherwise basically refers to using completing the square, but because it says quadratic formula, we pretty much need to do that. Now we know it's equal to 0, so that's a massive help. So we've got A equals 3, B equals 1, and C equals -5. Then what you then want to do is substitute the numbers in. Now most common calculators may have this feature, which is why it's only worth 2 marks and there's no rearranging involved, but it's always good practice to at least show that you're substituting the numbers in correctly. I always like to put a bracket around the 4ABC, so I've got 4 times 3 times -5, and that's all divided by 2 times 3. Now if I enter that into my calculator, the first time using a minus, I get -1.468, and my positive value is 1.135. And again, rounding is entirely up to you. There's no mention of rounding, so you can either copy off your calculator, but if you are rounding, please do make sure that you have done that correctly. Moving on to question 20, it says that a vending machine has a different item in each section. It sells 7 drinks, 3 of which are juice, 5 snacks, 2 of which are fruit bars, and 11 meals, 4 of which are salad. 1 drink, 1 snack, 1 meal are chosen at random. Show that the probability of getting a juice, a fruit bar, and a salad is more than 5%. So first things first, what you want to do is work out the total combinations. So total combos, and what we do is we multiply those 3 numbers together. So it's going to be 7 times 5 times 11, which is 385. We then want to work out the total combos of juice, fruit bars and salad. And to do that, what we do is we multiply these three numbers together. So that's going to be 3 times 2 times 4, which is 24. So then looking at the percentage, that's going to be 24 out of 385. And if I multiply that by 100, I get an answer of 6%. So here we can see that 6% is more than 5%, which is what they wanted me to show. Moving on to question 21. So here we've got a function of 3x plus 9 divided by 5, and we've got g of x, which equals 6x minus 1. So the question is saying show that gf of 2 is an integer. So if I first of all substitute f of 2, so 2 into f, I get 3 times 2 plus 9 divided by 5, and that comes up to an answer of 3. Then if I work out g of 3, I've then got to do 6 times 3, take away 1, which gives me an answer of 17. Then for question 21b, it says show the inverse function of f8 is not an integer. So for this, if I just write down what f of x was, and that was 3x plus 9 divided by 5, well then to work out the inverse function of x, I make the function equal to y, and then what I then want to do is make x the subject. So I've got 5y equals 3x plus 9, 5y minus 9 equals 3x, 5y minus 9 over 3 equals x, and then from this I then want to do my swapping. So I've got f of minus 1 of x equals 5x minus 9 over 3. Then once I've got this, what I then want to do is then substitute x equals 8 into there. So I've got 5 times 8 minus 9 divided by 3, and that comes up to an answer of 31 over 3, or 10 and 1/3, or 10.3 recurring, which is not an integer. Moving on to question 22, it says factorise fully. So here we can see that both the terms have got x's. So if I take an x out, I get x squared plus 49, or actually minus 49. Now, hopefully you would spot that this here is a difference of 2 squares. So that then becomes x, and I set up my double brackets. What do you have to square to get x squared? Well, that's going to be x. And what do you have to square to get 49? That's going to be a 7. One's a plus, one's a minus. And there is my factorisation fully of x cubed minus 49x. Then moving on to question 23, it says 61 students recorded how many hours they spent revising for a test. The histogram represents the results. And the question is asking us to work out the estimated mean for the 61 students spent revising. You may use this table to help. So first things first, what I need to do is work out the frequency of each of these bars. Now the frequency in a histogram equals the area of the bar. So the area of this bar here is going to be 1.5. Let me use a different colour, that actually comes up. So it's going to be 1.5 multiplied by 6, which gives me an answer of 9. The second bar is going to be 3.5 times 4, which equals 14. This third bar, well, that's going to be 2 times 5, which is 10. This fourth bar is going to be 4 times 4.5, which is 18. And then this last bar is going to be 4 times 2.5, and that gives me an answer of 10. So then using these frequencies, I can substitute them into the table where I've got frequencies. So I've got 9, 14, 10, 18 and 10. Now the midpoint of each group is basically the upper bound, take away the lower bound, and divided by 2. So that's going to be, or plus, sorry, divided by 2. We can work it out in your head. So it's 3, 8, 11, 14 and 18. Then to work out the fx value, I multiply these numbers together. So that's going to give me 27, 112, 110, 252 and 180. Now the estimated mean is going to be the total of fx divided by the total frequency. So it's going to be the total of this number here. So if I add up all of those numbers, I get 681. I add up the total frequency, and that's 61. So it's going to be 681 divided by 61, and that gives me an answer of 11.16, which I'm just going to round up to as 11.2, and that's to 1 decimal place. It then says give a reason why the answer to part A is an estimate, and again you want to write something along the lines of because midpoints were used, raw data was not provided, and so or you're using group data. So something along those lines would be fine to get that single mark. Then moving on to question 24, it says that B is 60 miles from A on a bearing of 170. A ship sails from A on a bearing of 247 degrees. It travels at a constant speed of 23 miles per hour for 1.5 hours. Is the ship closer to B than it was when it left A? So let's have a look at working this out. So 247 degrees is somewhere going to be here. Now, working out what this angle here is going to be, well, that's 247. So I can then work out what this angle here is going to be, and that angle there is going to be 247, take away 170, which is 77 degrees. Now I can then work out what the length is. So if I just put this as being A, then we're traveling at 23 miles for 1.5 hours. So distance equals speed times time. So it's going to be 23 times 1.5, and that comes up to a total of 34.5, and that's miles. So this length here is 34.5. Now, what I could do with working out is to see how far away they are. Well, that's going to be this length here. And the question is asking, is it closer than it once was? Well, the original distance was 60 miles away. So I want to see, is X bigger or smaller than 60 miles? So if I take that triangle out, I've got this angle here, which is 77. I've got this length here, which is 34.5, and this length here, which is 60, and that is X. I'm going to be using the cosine rule. So X squared equals, and it's going to be 60 squared plus 34.5 squared minus 2 lots of 34.5 times 60 times cos of 77. Now if I type that all into my calculator, again, X squared value of 3858.952, and an X value, if I round that up, is 62.120. Now regardless of rounding, we can see that as 62.120 is greater than 60, it's going to say, well, the answer is going to be no, it's further away. And there is my answer for that one. Then moving on to question 25, it says we've got two congruent parallelograms, which basically means they are the same, and it says P, Q, R, V and V, R, S, T are joined. QP equals A and PV equals B. X is the midpoint of VT and VW to V to R, W to R is 1 to 2. Prove that Q, W and X are on a straight line. So for this, what we want to say is, well, to prove they're on a straight line, so if Q, W, X is on a straight line, then the ratio of Q to W is going to be something multiplied by W to X. So this is what I'm going to use to prove whether the statement is true or not. So to work this out, what I need to do is I need to work out what these lengths are going to be. So we can see that this, as they're congruent, this line here is going to be the same as this here. So if this is A, all of this is going to be A, and we know that we need to split up into 3 parts. So A divided by 3 equals a third A, and then V to W and W to R, if we times that by, and the ratio is 1 to 2, so if we times that by a third A, and we times this by a third A, then we get VW as being a third A, and W to R equals 2/3 A. So if I just write that down now, so this length here is going to be, now that's going to be, I've worked out what W to V is going to be, or V to W is going to be positive a third, so then that's going to be positive a third, and this here is going to be 2/3 of A. Now I can then work out what Q to W is going to be. So we know that this is a midpoint, so if all of this is B, then we then know that this length here is going to be a half B, and so is this length here. So from this, what we can then do is work out what Q to W is. Now Q to W is going to go from Q to P, and then P to V, and then V to W. So that then becomes A plus B, and it's going to be minus a third A. Now simplifying all of that, I get 2/3 of A plus B. So that's what Q to W is. I'm just going to put a little box around that. The next thing for me to then work out is what W to X is going to be. Now to get from W to X, I'm going to go from W to V and then V to X. So W to V is going to be a third A, and V to X is a half B. Now that can't be simplified, so I'm just going to put a little box around that. Now if I just write this a little bit neater, then what I've got is Q to W is 2/3 of A plus B, and W to X is a third A plus a half B. Now to get from this to this, I've got to times by 2. To get from this to this, I need to times by 2, and as you can see, these two numbers here are the same. So as WX times 2 equals QW, it then says that QWX are on a straight line. And there we go. Then moving on to question 26. Now question 26, it says Helena runs a 800-meter race in 140 seconds. The speed time graph represents the first 100 seconds of her run. Helena ran the last 40 seconds at a constant deceleration. Work out her speed as she finishes the race. Now, when working this question out, the biggest mistake that students do with this question is they will automatically think that because it's running at a constant deceleration and it's for 40 seconds, that you're going to draw a straight line from there to there. Now that's going to be wrong, because what you're then assuming is that Helena's, when she gets to the finish line, she's going to be literally running at 0 speed. And that's not the case. She's going to be running at least at some speed as she crosses that finish line. We just don't know what that's going to be. So if I just imagine that we're just drawing a line, let's say there, it's this here that we want to work out, x, and we want to know what that is there. Now, what we want to do first is, first of all, we need to see how far she has run in those first 100 seconds. So the distance covered in the first 100 seconds. Now that is the area under the curve between 0 and 100 seconds. So if I just get rid of that wonky line, because that helps no one. So I want to work out the area of this bit, A, and the area of B. So that's the area of A plus the area of B. Now the area of A, well, that's going to be 10 times 6. So that's 10 times 6, which is 60. And the area of B, which is a rectangle, that's going to be 90 times 6, which is 540. Well, actually, I forgot that that's a triangle, so we need to divide that by 2. So we're dividing that by 2, so that becomes 30. So 30 plus 540 is 570 meters. So what I then know, because it's an 800 meter race, that the area of this trapezium equals 230. Now, how do you work out the area of a trapezium? Well, it's going to be the two parallel sides added together, divided, multiplied by h, divided by 2. So here we can see that we've got A, which we don't know because we don't know what this height here is. So I'm just going to call that A, x, plus 6, because I do know the height of that, multiplied by 40, divided by 2 equals 230. Now x is what I want to know. So here I've got x plus 6 times 40 equals, and it's going to be 460. Then x plus 6 equals 460 divided by 40. And if I type that into my calculator, 460 divided by 40 equals 11.5. So x plus 6 equals 11.5. So x equals 5.5. And that's her speed, and that's in meters per second. And there is my final answer. Then moving on to question 27, it says that in a class there are n boys, a total of 25 students, and 2 students are chosen at random. The probability that both students are boys is 7/20. Work out the value of n. Well, the probability that a boy is selected first, well, that's going to be n, which we don't know, but it's over 25 because we know that's the total. Now, if a boy's already been chosen, then we know that how many boys are there if one's already been taken out? Well, that's going to be n minus 1. And if one student's already been chosen, how many students are altogether left? Well, that's going to be 24. So we know that, and because we want and we multiply, so we know that those two fractions multiplied together equal 7/20. Now, hopefully you can spot that this then turns into an algebraic fraction. So we're multiplying, so we multiply the two numerators together, we multiply the denominators together, and that becomes 600, and that equals 7/20. Then doing a bit of cross multiplying, we get 20n n minus 1 equals 7 times 600, and that then becomes, if I just neaten the left hand side, that becomes 4,200. I can divide both sides by 20 just to make the numbers smaller, so I get n minus 1 equals, and that's going to be 210. Then expanding the brackets out, I get n squared minus n equals 210. This now slowly starts to look like a quadratic. So I've got n squared minus n minus 210 equals 0. Now what we then want to do is solve this quadratic. So you can either do it by factorizing or using the formula, or you could use completing the square. It's entirely up to you, but it does factorize, and it's n minus 15, n minus 14, giving us two answers of n equals 15 or 14. Sorry, that should be a plus there, so that should be minus 14. Now it can't equal this because you can't have negative number of boys, so the correct answer is n equals 15. Then moving on to our last question, it says that A, B, C, D, E, F is a triangular prism. P is the point on EF. EB is 29 centimeters. Angle EBP is 35 degrees, and angle EPB is 114. Work out the length of EP. So let's first of all mark the information that we've been given. So we know that this line here is 29. We know that the angle EBP, so let me just mark that, so EBP, so it's this angle here, is 35, and we know that angle EPB is 114, so EPB, which is this angle here, is 114, and the question is asking us to work out the length of EP. So we wanted to work out what this length here is going to be. Well, it may look like a 3D Pythagoras question, but actually labelling it, it's actually not that bad. So if I just take that question out and draw the triangle again, that becomes 114, that becomes 25. This is what I'm trying to find, and we know that this length here is 29. So what I'm actually going to do is actually use a sine rule. So I know that A over sine A equals B over sine B. And so I've got x over sine 35 equals, and it's going to be 29 over sine 114. So then doing a bit of cross multiplying, I get x sine 114 equals 29 sine 35. So x equals 29 sine 35 divided by sine 114, and typing that all into my calculator, which I'm going to do now. So 29 sine 35 over sine 114, and that gives me an answer of 18.2, and that's in centimeters, and that's to 1 decimal place, and there is my final answer.